Okay, so for this next video here, we're back inside Blender, and we're going to take in the maps that we made, and we're going to apply them to this model here. This is the one we were working on the last modeling part of the video series. I know we took like maybe 2 or 3 videos into like the texturing process and making textures, but I think we left off and we had the roof tile texture on this guy. But again, it was so small. I think I actually did. No, I don't. I thought I had a screenshot of it still. It was so small. So that's why we had to go in and we fixed up the scale of those tiles, remade it seamless, and then we're going to bring it back in, set up a material, and we're going to start applying this onto our assets. So you might notice, obviously, I'm using a custom interface here. Don't worry about the interface. That's not important at all. You should still be able to follow along with that. I'm going to come up here, go to the shading tab, and this might look a little different too for people who aren't too familiar with Blender. It's just these windows have kind of been changed around. I think the default Blender window setup is kind of different. Inside this, I just kind of have my viewport itself. So I have the editor viewport here, and then you need this guy here also. This is the shader editor. This is where we're going to build our node-based shader, and I have the UV editor here as well, just so I can make changes to the UV islands to fix any stretching that might happen on the object as we work. So if you're looking to figure out how this works, by the way, if you come up to the corner of a window, say here, and you just pull on that, it'll pull out another window like that. And we can change this to whatever we want. So I could turn this into texture node editor. I know we have that set up somewhere as well. But yeah, you can choose what you want this window to be. Another instance of a shader editor if you'd like. To collapse these, you go over the bar on the side, right click, and you can choose to join areas. So if I just join areas, hover over the one you want to close down and just click that, it'll close it down then. So that's how you open and close windows down. So I just kind of have mine modified a little to suit my workflow a little better. So here's the model I'm going to be working on for this video. I'm just going to select it all because I don't want everything else kind of blocking up the scene on me. So I'm going to press the slash key to go into this view. And I wonder if I could turn on the shortcuts here. They're not showing up for some reason in this tab. Okay, that might be a problem, but hopefully not. Oh, it won't be in this tab too long anyway. So I'm just going to set up my material here, and I'll be going back into my viewport, the editing viewport then. So, okay, to get started with this, we have our textures. I'm just going to select the object that I want to affect, which is the roof tile area of this object. I'm just going to remove this material because it has a standard material setup on it. I'm going to go from scratch with a brand new material. So I will click new here. By the way, I'm in the material tab on the side here. Just there's a couple different tabs here. The little globe looking thing here, that's your material property. So you just want to make a new material here. Just click on the new button. And you'll see that in our node editor, we get a brand new material output and a principled shader as well. So this is where we're going to plug all our textures and stuff into. So I'll just quickly rename this one. This one we have was Atlas. This is the first one, so Atlas 01 we'll call it. And it changed in here. You'll see now along the top of this bar, you see Atlas 01, so that's the one that's loaded in. By the way, if you need to scroll this, maybe to get to your settings on this, on the right side of this bar, you just hover over the bar and use your mouse wheel. I'm pretty sure I said that before in one of the videos, but with these kind of compressed down windows, you really need to be scrolling back and forward with this. So we're going to add some new nodes into this, and there's 3 that we use primarily. So if I press Q on my quick favorites, you see that I have them already selected and added into my quick favorites. And I just removed them there because I'm going to go through this manually and set them up again for your own benefit. The first one and most useful we're going to be using is you press Shift A and go to texture. We're going to make an image texture. But instead of just clicking this, just right click it and add the quick favorites. So then every time we just press Q, it's waiting there for us. We don't have to go through all these menus just to find the one that we want, you know. So the next one we're going to need is press Shift A and we'll go to vector and we'll use a normal map. That's a vector-based map, so we're going to need one of them. I did not do the thing, hang on. Normal map, right click, add the favorites. Remove that for cleanness. Right, and then we need, let me think, what else? I think it's a converter. Yeah, color ramp. Okay, so we're going to right click and add that to quick favorites. So we have 3 here, and not that we might use it all the time, but we could go here, press Shift A, go to color, and add a mix RGB. Add that to quick favorites too. That can sometimes be handy if you want to blend black and white maps like your ambient occlusion with a background color. Just to give the base color a hint on your texture. It's going to be very rarely used, I think, for like windows and stuff, to give like a clear texture a slight hint of glass as well. That can come in handy. So we'll add it into the quick favorites just for an in case we need it scenario. So we're going to set this up here now. I'm going to press Q and I want to load in an image texture. And I'll load in another image texture. And I'll load in a normal map. Okay, so the image texture is going to be our albedo that we brought in. So I'm going to quickly load this up. Atlas and diffuse, that's the albedo map you done. And I'll open that. I'm just going to connect the color node output to the base color input of the principal map. And you can see straight away, because we had set the UVs up in the last video, if I could show here. So basically, these square looking UVs are our root segments that we had set up before. Now here it doesn't look exactly right, so I might need to come back and have a look at that, but you can see that the actual tile size itself looks a lot better. It's not as cramped, you know. We'll keep going, we'll get it set up and then we'll compare the way it was in the last one. So that's our color map added. Now we need to bring in our roughness map. We'll just move these down. And for roughness map, we're going to add another image node here. So press Q and go image texture. And I'll just connect the color to the roughness input. And you can see that glosses the hell out of it. So we don't want that. We want to bring in our map. So we'll go to open, go to my rough map and open that. And it's probably going to be very subtle. Not actually that recognizable at all. So we'll come back to that in a second. And we just need to add our normal map to this now. So I'll select this texture that we have sitting here and the normal vector. I'm going to connect color to color on the vector node and then from normal to normal on the principal mode. And we get this horrific result because we haven't actually added our texture in yet. So what we need to do is first add our texture, our normal map, open. And we can see there's some information there, but it's probably not looking right because we're using normal maps and a roughness map which don't have color data in them. So you can see here on color space on our diffuse map, which is a color map, that color space is set to RGB and it's in the color node input. So if these aren't color maps, they're set to non-color data. They need to be set to non-color data. Chances are when they come in, they probably won't be. So just make sure that if they're set to RGB, sometimes it can look a little funny. So just make sure that your normal map and your roughness map are set to non-color data. And on the normal map vector node itself, you can actually tweak the strength of the normal effect. So here you can see when we do that, it's actually kind of making the normal map pop, but it's also making the roughness map kind of come to life as well. So the normals can kind of affect that on the side, you know. But you could probably look at that and say, well, even with the color or the roughness map added, it's probably still a little bit too glossy. And that's where the color ramp that we saved up will come in. So if I press Q, add a color ramp, and just bring it over to tie between both. Oh god, what happened there? This link between the roughness node input and the color output of the material. If I press Q, get a color ramp, and just drop it on that line, it connects for us. And you can see then if I tweak the settings on this with these two sliders, it will affect the overall gloss of that map. So you can have a look and try to find somewhere like a medium ground that works. But now bear in mind that this texture atlas has multiple material sets on it. So you might want this kind of glossed effect, like it's been a wet day or something. You might want that on your roof tiles. But then it could make the wooden structure of your window frame pop a little too much. So it's all about just getting the balance right. So I add a color ramp in usually, but I tend not to touch it unless I absolutely need to. Or from getting like a specific shot that I want, where maybe the roof is a priority over the rest of it. You want this to look right. Well, then it's there to give you that advantage. But overall, I think that looks pretty okay. Maybe a little too glossy, but I'll just bring that down a bit. And if you look here now as well, the likes of this has the old UVs attached on it, so they need to be fixed up. I'm going to be using a different type of UV texture or atlas for that, texture atlas for that. For the moment, I just want to select them, I guess, and I'm going to remove them from this object for the moment. Or no, maybe I think actually I'll just grab these and I'm going to re-UV them. So I'm going to press U and I'm going to unwrap. And you can see in my UV layout here that just unwrapped them. So I'll move these off, and you can see as well as I move that around, these are changing. So I want to get like the image of my atlas in here, so I have a better knowledge about what I'm adjusting these UVs to. So for the moment, I just want to find it here. I'll find ambient. No, this is this is the color map. Okay, so give it a little bit more to work with, and I'll zoom in here. And I want for this part of the model, maybe I'm going to give it this wooden texture. So I'll just find my UV here, and I'm just going to bring it over this point, and I'm going to scale this down. And you can see here on my model, as I scale that, it adjusts. So that's a pretty nice way of doing it. And also another design thing that I kind of like to do is, because we have darkened gaps in this, we can use those darkened gaps at these creases where the two textures meet, and it gives a kind of a natural looking transition in, because there's usually a bit of shadow will collect in there anyway. So if I find out which is this edge of my texture, I kind of can't unless this is turned on. Right, so I need to rotate this island set 180. So I'll hover over it, press L, I'll press R and rotate the entire thing 180. And now with my move tool active, I'm going to pull it so that this edge is in line with the darker gap of this texture. So you can see once I pull it over that line, then on my texture here, I've got a nice darker transition that kind of leads into this wooden piece of the model. And that just gives it a much more natural look and transition in. I don't think I need to worry so much about the bottom here. I can do, if I want though, maybe if I was to select, press 3 to go into my poly select, and I'm just going to select these guys. And the point is I want to stretch this UV out now so that this black line comes to meet at this crease. So if I don't do it that way, hang on a second, need to go to edge mode, I think. Yeah, and now I'll pull it in. So we're using that natural shadow that's in the texture to kind of give the illusion that the model is more realistic, I guess, because shadow would naturally catch in there, you know. So that's just another little design trick that I like to keep in my head when I'm doing these kinds of things. So with that, then you can see how the texture is added onto this. We have a nice little bit of roughness catching the light there as well. The question I have now, is this seamless? Is it tiling like we want it to? And the chances are on the roof tiles it probably is. On this wooden piece it probably isn't, because we did not bring it up to the edges. We want that seamless run, so make sure that we are using the full length of our square texture here. And we go to the bottom. I'll actually leave this purposely like this for the moment, just to show you the effect. I'm sure you get it, but to check it though, I'm just going to select it, Shift D, and I'm going to move it to the side. Probably should have turned snap on for that actually. I'll remove it, go to my settings again. I'm at the top here. I'm just using the scroll wheel to move. I'll turn on my segment snap and Shift D, duplicate it and move it to the side. Now you can see that that is pretty flawless as far as the tiles go. You don't see any seam running through here, so that's a good sign. Now there's just the wood, and you can see the seam there that I'm talking about. There's a clear gap because we didn't use those UVs properly. So I'm just going to fix that by selecting it. I'll select it too, and I will go to vertex select in my UV editor. I'm just going to drag over all those vertices, and if I pull that down to the bottom of the texture, you'll see it naturally just fixes itself. So I'm going to zoom right in on the map here and just make sure it's spot on that line. And now we have our wooden beam there is tiling nicely. So now we can duplicate that to our heart's content, and it'll always run seamless to the next. Okay, so that's basically how these textures are applied now onto the model. I think in the next couple of videos I will continue working on this and get the rest of it UV'd. Get it set up nice. I want to make what's called, well, it's not technically called that, I call it a running texture. Texture atlas. It's basically, here we have 4 squares that are completely tileable in their own, but that's all well and good as long as the UVs that you're cutting are squared. For something that is, how would I go about showing this? I'm just going to select this piece of wood and duplicate it. And I'll press P to separate it. Now I'm going to use this as an example. I set my origin to the geometry and press T to open my tools here. I want to find, at the moment that is using a square piece of UV here. Okay, but what if this was infinitely longer? So you have a piece of wood that's, say, that length. Do you then have to cut this into segments, like by adding cuts into it like this to make them square? Well, yeah, you would do. unless you use what I call a running seam, like a running tile. It's basically, instead of 4 squares, you're using strips. But again, you're adding in a seamless texture, but you're only using, say, if it was this brick, you'd only use this row of bricks. But you'd use it from this side of the texture to the other, so that it will run. Say this was your UV, and it was infinitely longer. As long as you're over the texture that you want, and you have it, say, starting here, once that texture gets to this side, it just repeats from here again. So you have a continuous run. It goes on as long as you need it to. So that can come in handy for, like, if you have long, say you had like a long piece of guttering that was going along this, or you had wooden posts that are supporting the roof, say. You don't want to have to cut that up into squares, because that's just adding more geometry that you don't actually need. So we're going to set up one of those maps as well. There'll be 2 types of different atlas textures going in. And I'll finish off UVing this, I think, get it modeled and add maybe a couple walls too. And then when it comes to like fine tuning this and adding the little details, like the little bits onto it, the decorative touch, we're probably going to go over and making one of those texture atlases too. But for the moment, we'll just continue on, and we'll get this model looking as good as we can.